There are lots of stories about what happened here at the Strait, and that's on both sides. And I was mentioning this woman, Marie Caroline Matson Hamlin, in 1883 put together this book, and it's called Legends of the Detroit. And she's got all kinds of legends in here. I just picked out 2 or 3, and I want to relate them to you because it's interesting to see where people were. This is 140 years ago, and she was one of the few remaining minority of French speakers, French culture. And she wrote this in English, of course. And the book is this big monster. It's 400 pages on PDF or something. But about half of it has to do with legends. So some of them you might have heard about the Nain Rouge, the Devil's Grist, that is Windmill Point out in Grosse Pointe, the Widow's Curse, the Lutin. And I'd like to start just pulling some pieces out of this about le Lutin. And Lutin, as our friend who lives just outside Paris will tell us, translated variably Laura into dwarf, little person, evil, goblin, that's a good thing. Thank you. It's a good goblin. So, there was a story here about Jocko, and Jocko lived out in Grosse Pointe, and every day he could be seen driving his favorite horse along the lake shore. Remember, she's writing this in 1883, doesn't even think of what a car might be. And she's talking about how great big Detroit is in the 1880s when it were to grow a factor of 10 in the next 30 years. And she said he could be seen driving his horse, l'éclair, meaning lightning, all along the lake shore. And one night he went to Antoine Griffard, whose magic violin would get anybody up and dancing on the floor for hours. At dawn, he was going to the stable to harness up his horse because he had a long drive home, and he noticed the horse was all covered with foam. Her mane all tangled with burrs. How can this be? The horse was in the barn all night. And he thought, okay, somebody might have played a trick on me and taken the horse out for a ride. I didn't really like this. And so he didn't think much about it, whatever. But the next morning, he found his favorite horse again, tired, dejected, as if it had been driven hard all night. He couldn't figure this out. He put a padlock on the barn door and said, nobody's going to be running my horse around at night. And he put ashes around the door so he could discover the footsteps of anybody who snuck into the barn. The next morning, he came in and he found the horse. Same thing, tired, sweaty, but the padlock was still there and there was no marks on the horse. Finally, he went to one of the experts in mythological and other special magic things, and he said, hey, what's going on with my horse, do you think? And his friend said, c'est le lutin qui la soigne. It's the goblin who's taking care of her. Well, the lutin was the most dreaded and haunted the Point many years, the Point, Grosse Pointe, and was supposed, for some reason, when he took a dislike to an habitant, to tantalize him by riding his finest horses at night. Jocko didn't believe him. He said, come on. No, it's somebody else is doing this. But his friend said, no, he'd heard of la bête à cornes, the beast with the horns, as some call the lutin. And his friend told him he should brand his horses with a cross or put an amulet or charm about their necks. He said, no, I don't really think I'm going to do that. He's looking for something better. So one bright moonlit night, he stationed himself at the window of his house so he could get a good look at the barn without being seen himself, and armed himself with a trusty rifle, waited for his foe. Not a sound disturbed the night, save a low murmuring of the waters of Lake St. Clair against the beach, the lone cry of the whippoorwill, and the occasional splash of a restless bullfrog. All nature seemed to slumber. Suddenly, a sound like the troubled neighing of a horse fell on his strained ear, and keeping his eyes on the barn doors, he saw them noiselessly open, and his favorite horse, Leclerc, trembling like a leaf, fly out of the barn. On his back from such a fearful apparition, on his back was the fearful Lutin. Jocko was no coward, but he felt courage oozing out of his knees, cold chills chasing each down his back. The monster resembled a baboon with a horned head and skin of bristling black hair, brilliant restless eyes, and a devilish leer on its face. It clutched with one hand the mane of Leclerc, the horse, while the other whipped her with a stick of thornbush, for the fiend rode without saddle or bridle. Jocko recognized in an instant that his rifle would be powerless against such a foe, and like a bright inspiration, it came to him what he used to do and was known to exorcise a demon. He seized the holy water font in his house, one of which hung at the head of his bed, and he threw it and its contents onto the monster as it passed beneath the window. A demoniacal shriek rent the air. The horse snorted, reared, and notwithstanding the efforts of the fiend, plunged into the chilly waters of Lake St. Clair. Jocko rushed in pursuit, but when he arrived at the beach, only the circling eddies marked the spot where the frightened animal and its fiendish rider had disappeared. Firing his rifle into the air to waken his neighbors, who, unaccustomed to such signals in the middle of the night, rushed out to find out what was the matter. Jocko related his adventure, his disoriented appearance, the absence of the horse, the broken fragments of the holy water font, and the thornbush stick dropped by the goblin confirmed his tale. Like a judicious man, he marked all his horses thereafter with a cross, fearing the return of Lutin. And to this day, Grosse Pointe inhabitants retain this custom, and whenever in the early morn, on going to the barn, they find a favorite horse reeking with sweat and foam, and all the mane tangled as if by claws of the beast, they shake their heads and mysteriously and say, "The Lutin has come again." So remember, this is in the days before Netflix, before cable TV, and you gather around in the evening with family and friends, and you had to do something. And you played cards, and one of the things they did was they told stories. So there's another one here, and these are all local. That's what I like about them. There was, back in 1735, during the French period here, there was a Mardi Gras party, and they had it in this nice house, and it was up on Connors Creek. And if any of you know Detroit very well, Connors Creek is where the Chrysler plant is now, the Jeep plant. And up there, they would tell stories about a bridge along Connors Creek. And there were two brothers, Louis and Felix. And they were very, very different. Louis was tall, and he was silent and reserved. And everywhere he'd go, he'd kind of put it down around things. But Felix was different. Felix was life of the party, and he enjoyed everything. But in those days, accidents around the farm and the house were pretty common. And Felix was fatally injured by falling from a tree and expired soon thereafter. Though before he died, he made his brother Louis promised to watch over his wife and children, and he set aside the mill they had to give his widow the money from the mill. But after Felix died, Louis became more and more absorbed in himself. The children stayed out of his way. Food was measured for home consumption. He looked scrupulously after every detail in the simple ménage. In vain, the widow of Felix pleaded she was starving. And he would not allow them out of his sight. And one by one, the children drooped and died. They were laid to rest over time. The mother asked for more food. And then one day, the mother was able to wander off towards the pear trees, the Jesuit pear trees that used to grow along both sides of the river here. The Jesuit pear trees that were survivors from the age of Louis XIV. But pear trees are special. Their seeds do not grow new pear trees. They have to be grafted onto a guanyu. What do we say in English? The halfway between a pear and an apple tree. And we still have a few around here. But the bad brother discovered her. And he led her back to the house, saying he couldn't afford to feed lazy people. And she raised her hands to heaven and she said, "Woe is my lot. I called these 12 trees, named after the apostles." That's out where the waterworks is, not far from here. And they were still alive back in the 1920s. "May your property be swept away, may your cows refuse to give milk, and you will be haunted by me and my children. You have defrauded a widow and broken a solemn promise. The pear tree under which you shunned me will be shunned by its comrades, and you, like Judas, will stand alone, for the curse of the widow rested on an object beneath it." Shortly afterwards, the widow died. The people living around, the habitants, were indignant and avoided Louis more than ever. It was soon rumored that strange things were going on at the mill. Weird sounds were heard on Sunday nights especially, and one with more courage or curiosity than others peeped through the cracks of the mill and saw a great number of black cats all dancing around. And the people shook their heads and said mysteriously it was le sabbat des chats, the Sabbath of the cats. Cats were believed in those days to be in league with the devil. And the people hinted that there were secret dealings with the evil ones. The cows sickened and died, and the habitants refused to bring their corn to the grist mill, for they heard such piteous wails and saw the cadaverous, ghostly hands as if imploring for food. But the old pear tree was found one morning, separated from its companions on the north side, and its withered leaves and drooping boughs spoke of some blight which had robbed it of its proud and stately beauty. Louis saw all of this, and his land passed into the hands of strangers. He left, no one ever hearing again of him, and with him died the widow's curse. There's some of the upbeat stories they used to tell around the fire. But I want to leave you with one more here. And this is one that many of you may have heard, and we talked about it earlier today. For those of you that don't know, the third Sunday in March here in Midtown Detroit, there is a festival that started 14 years ago called La Marche du Nain Rouge. And La Marche du Nain Rouge is a very specific Detroit event. And it was started by Francis Gruneau, who was here this morning, actually, when we were connected to France on the video. And Francis he's an urban planner, is a lifelong Detroit resident, great guy. And he saw after Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans that their first Mardi Gras after the hurricane was a special a special event to help them turn their horrible tragedy into something more positive. He wanted to do something like that here in Detroit. But we can't do Mardi Gras because that's not really us in Detroit. So he started digging through, and he found this story in Madame Hamlin's Legends of Le Detroit. And it's about the Nain Rouge. So what he has done is they have created an event that takes place the third Sunday, and it's the first Sunday when spring begins. And so they get 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 people that come to banish the Nain Rouge every spring so that he doesn't bring bad tragedy and catastrophe to the city of Detroit. So how do they do it? Well, this is the part that's kind of original. He said, you don't want the Nain Rouge to see you because then he could come back and haunt you. So when you come, you should wear a mask. And these are the kind of masks some people wear. Some of us just wear plain masks. And you should wear a mask and be in costume, and we will banish the Nain Rouge. So it's this parade, and I invite you to come down. It's a great event. It's full of all kinds of diverse lifestyle people. But it is a great thing in Midtown. Family friendly, really a lot of fun. And they march down 2nd Avenue to the front of the Masonic Temple, and there they have a ceremony where the Nain Rouge somehow miraculously appears. Usually he's in a float at the end of the parade. And they have some current events doing comedy as a way to banish him out. So it's a great event, I recommend it, and we hope to be doing it in Windsor the night or two before the same weekend. And we've got a musical group coming from France who has been taken with this, oh wow, you do Nain Rouge stuff, cool, and they've written songs, and they're supposed to be coming here in March to do this. But what I'd like to do is a little bit about where this comes from. And the Nain Rouge was actually, you can find similar events, similar legends to this in France and in Normandy. Although Cadillac was from the south, he was not Norman, he was from the southwest part of France. But the story goes, and this is where it comes from. Hey, I'm not going to swear this is gospel in this book, but there's some good stories. And they used to tell these around the fireplace. So Cadillac, you know, originally came from France, but he didn't come right to Detroit. He was first along the East Coast, Maine, Nova Scotia, Bay of Fundy, and he was sent actually to spy on English ports, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and they got him in good graces. And then later he went to Quebec and to Montreal. And in Montreal, he married a woman, and he added some noble-sounding names to his name that he didn't have when he left France. He was a guy who liked to embellish his resume, if you will, but there was no internet at the time, so if you added a few noble names to you, then nobody could really check on it, and he got away with it. And because at the end of his life, the King of France recognized, I should say it's the Regency in the early 1700s, recognized the many things he did. The names he took arbitrarily for himself were officially granted to him. So, to me that's just amazing. But when he was in Montreal, he was getting ready to go on some of his voyages, because he was first in Michilimackinac for 4 or 5 years, went back, and then he came down here. But when he was in Montreal, he was in the town one evening, and a woman of unusual height and dark, swarthy complexion, restless, glittering eyes, said, "What is your name?" in a deep, sonorous voice. Sonorous voice with a slight foreign accent. "They call me Mère Minique la sorcière." And la sorcière is the witch. Okay? On her left shoulder was perched a black cat. Half a dozen palms from people reached out. "Read my palm, read my palm." Cadillac wasn't really interested. It was not that kind of guy. But eventually he said, okay, we'll do it. And he says, all right, ma bonne mère, good mother. A bit exaggerated, I'm sure. See what you can tell for my future. And she drew a clear, heavy liquid like quicksilver, mercury. And she, holding his hand, looked into the basin. She says, Sieur, yours is a strange destiny. A dangerous journey you will soon undertake. You will found a great city, which one day will have more inhabitants than all of New France now possesses. Many children will rest around your fireside. And she said, Mon chevalier, I wish you had not asked me to go on, because I see dark clouds arising, and I see your star dim in the future. The policy you intend pursuing in selling liquor to the natives is contrary to the advice of the Jesuits, and it will cause you much trouble, be the cause of your ruin. In the years to come, your colony, 2 minutes. In years to come, your colony will be the scene of strife and bloodshed. The natives will fight you. The hated English will struggle for its possession. But under a new flag, you will reach the height of prosperity which never in your wildest dreams. You're thinking about Detroit in the 1880s. It's not even automotive time. Detroit was already doing quite well with the forest industry. But you will die in France, in a sunnier climate than here. Not that you could want that today. And he said he was really worried. Will my children inherit my possessions? That was his secret desire. And the witch said, your future and theirs lies in your own hands. Beware of undue ambition. It will mar your plans and appease the Nain Rouge. Beware of offending him. Should you be so unfortunate to do so, nothing of your inheritance will be given to your heirs. Your name will scarcely be known in the city you founded. There were no Cadillac cars in the 1880s, just so you're aware. Okay? The next day, Lamont left Cadillac and he headed for what would become Detroit. Things were going okay. His children looked like he was putting together money. It was looking pretty good. But then one day, somebody said, hey, Cadillac, how's it going? He says, things can't go this well for so long. He says, a few days ago, my wife and I saw Le Petit Homme Rouge. Cadillac said, did you not hear? The Petit Homme Rouge, the dreaded Nain Rouge? What of it? What of it? Cadillac tried to whistle past the cemetery. Beware of the Nain Rouge. Oh, he said to his wife, forget what that fortune teller told us months ago. Suddenly across their path, trotting along the beach, advanced the uncouth figure of a dwarf, very red in the face with bright glistening eye. Instead of burning, it froze. Instead of possessing depth, it emitted a cold gleam. It's the Nain Rouge, whispered Cadillac. Get out of my way, you red imp. His wife said, you offended him. Your impetuosity will bring you and yours to ruin. You were told to coax him to beware of annoying this demon. And in your ungovernable temper, you do just otherwise. Misfortune will soon be ours. Soon afterwards, Cadillac visited Montreal. He was arrested through intrigues of his enemies and was compelled to sell his rights in Detroit to pay for his trial. He was removed to Louisiana as governor, but he died in Castel-Sarrazin, near Saint-Nicolas in France. His children never inherited an acre of his vast scene of strife. So, it's even said today that Cadillac saw it before the Battle of Bloody Run here in Detroit in 1763. The Nain Rouge was spotted. The night before the burning of the city in 1805, the Nain Rouge was spotted. And this is 1883. She's talking about it. She doesn't know anything about the riots in 1967. or some of the or the bad ice storm thereafter, where the Nain Rouge was apparently seen. But that is why, to this day, we banish the Nain Rouge every March, so that we here in Detroit can avoid future catastrophe. And it's in the book, so it must be true, like I believe me, folks. Thank you very much. You know, get up here and put some real talent.